Hey everyone, it's Mitt. Welcome back to my channel. On this channel, I talk about stocks, investing, and finance, and I have $25,000 invested in Palantir. Okay, so because I have that much money invested in Palantir, it's time to make another video about Palantir. Now, meet Kevin. Meet Kevin. Some of you guys who are probably watching this video, I'm a relatively new person in this whole stocks, investing, finance scene. I love talking about it primarily because I've been watching Meet Kevin for the past year. And honestly, Meet Kevin, if you're watching this video, if the title or thumbnail got your attention, I hope it did. Definitely a big inspiration for me. Definitely love you. Definitely think you're just amazing in terms of the content you put out and the level of analysis you give. You recently gave some thoughts on Palantir, and I have $25,000 in the company, and people who are watching this probably also have some money in the company. Now, it's not as much as Meet Kevin. I think he has like 168,000 or something. It's a ridiculous number because this guy just has a lot of money to invest in stocks. But nonetheless, he just made a video recently about his concerns with the Palantir stock, and I wanted to do a reaction to it and basically give my thoughts and my analysis on it as well. Now, key takeaway is that I don't disagree with much of what he's saying. I also don't think he's being bearish. He's being a little bit more cautious, which I think is totally reasonable. But I want to react to it, give my analysis. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's going to be in a little box in the corner, so you'll be able to see it as well. And we're going to give our thoughts and analysis towards what he thinks the danger is of Palantir, or of investing in Palantir right now, and some of the upside and potential opportunities. So let's check out his reaction.
I bought this thing under 20. I bought call options on it, and I dumped it at 29. Now, when I dumped my call options at 29,
so obviously, he definitely bought it when it was really cheap, and it looks like it might be going under 20 soon as well. You know, you never know. So definitely a very successful swing trade for Meet Kevin. So definitely something that I think you would be happy for if you were an investor.
I took a little bit of the money. It was like $50,000, and I reinvested it into shares, and then I thought I would just sort of keep buying in if there was a downtrend. But I didn't keep rebuying in. I took my fat tendies for my call option, only rebought.
Did Meet Kevin make that word popular, tendies? Or is that just like a word that exists in the investing space and he's like using it a lot? I don't know. I don't know if he created that word or it's just a word. Let me know what that means. I think it means 10,000, right? That's what tendy means. It refers to 10,000. I might be totally wrong on that, so let me know.
Bought in a little bit and then never rebought back in as I was doing more research on the company. And upon doing further research on the company, there is a sincere risk that their total addressable market might not be as large as individuals think. Now, I think Palantir's software is incredible for logistics. It's incredible for the government. It's incredible for really figuring out things that humans can't. It's artificial intelligence, taking data points from many different points and putting together solutions for delivery, for logistics, for providing better service for clients or customers or whatever. But the software gets better with more data. The more data goes into the software, the better it gets. So you actually have this network effect where...
So that's a really cool thing. I want to talk about it a little bit before we go further. First of all, his first concern is that the total addressable market is not going to be as big as he thinks it's going to be. And we'll talk about that in a second. That's a valid concern. But the second thing is this idea of a network effect, right? So if you're ever concerned about, if you're ever curious about what a network effect is, a network effect is basically each individual user that joins the network adds more value to the network. So if you think of something like YouTube, the reason YouTube has a strong network effect is because creators upload videos, consumers consume those videos, and consumers are valuable to the network because they're there to consume content, which gives an incentive for creators to create content. And creators are integral to the network because if there's no content that they're creating, then there's nothing to get consumers to come back to the platform. So there's a very unique relationship between how those two nodes of the network ultimately interact, which creates an effect that allows the network to grow and grow and get to the exponential rate that something like a YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp have ultimately become.
Where the more people use it, the more companies use it, the more the algorithms actually get smarter and smarter and smarter, and the bigger and better Palantir becomes. However, we've recently, especially this year, had a very big risk that companies do not want exposure to. A lot of companies don't want exposure to, and that's privacy risk. There are companies that are deadly fearful, and Apple was one of the first to really transition on this with their Apple ad transparency.
This is one of the things I really disagree with, and we'll get into why, but let's keep watching.
Ad tracking transparency, their ATT update, not to be confused with AT&T. This is, of course, now where you get a notification. Do you want to be tracked or not, right? This is just a sign of the times that companies are becoming increasingly aware of privacy and making sure they can do whatever they can to maintain and protect your privacy. Well, if individuals find out that you're a data point in Palantir, people might not be very comfortable with using that company's products and services. So a lot of companies actually hire different companies who use Matterport. So that way they're kind of like one leg, or use Palantir, not Matterport. So that way they're kind of one leg removed from Palantir. But that as privacy risks and concerns continue to balloon, I think there's a severe risk that Palantir's TAM might not be as big as the market expects, and Palantir's valuation could suffer as potentially their growth rate, which they're growing like crazy, isn't as sexy as previously envisioned. Look, I think the technology is great, but I think societally we could have some pressure and some blowback here. Keep this in mind, folks. Palantir in 2023 is expected to earn 27 cents of earnings. 27 cents, so if we divide 21.41, where the stock is now, divided by 27 cents, that puts us at about 80 times future earnings in 2023, and they're assuming a 39 to 30% growth. Well, if you now combine what Bloomberg said about software valuations and this potential privacy concern, which I don't see getting any better over the next 3 years, things don't look good, potentially, for Palantir.
Okay, so let's talk about this concern. There's a couple of problems with this concern. I think, if you were going to be a little bit more bearish about the stock, which again is totally fine, you have to be a level-headed investor, especially if you've put decent money in a high-growth tech stock that is obviously going to be affected by inflation, which we're seeing with Palantir and other software companies that are dealing with it right now. I think the other concern you would go with is more so the outstanding shares concern, which also is not the best argument, but that's like a better argument than this. The privacy concern that MeetKevin's going for is a little bit weird here, particularly because Kathy Wood, and I'm going to make a video on this, and sort of her investment thesis on Palantir is that their software is going to usurp, based upon how technologically advanced their AI is, something like an AWS, something like a Google Cloud, something like a Microsoft Azure. Why does that matter? All of those platforms are centralized entities that have your data in the cloud, right? So when MeetKevin's talking about how the data and the algorithms of the software only get better, which makes the software better if companies choose to contribute data, to the platform, then that's going to create a privacy risk. The reason I disagree with this is because the reason companies are choosing to use Palantir is because their data is actually not centralized in some of the big players, right? It's not going to AWS, it's not going to Google, it's not going to Microsoft. Palantir is almost a step away from those companies, right? Palantir is not a centralized entity in the same way that it operates. And I'm going to do another video on this, on how they've partnered with Black Sky, right? So if you ever did any research into how they partner with Black Sky, a lot of the data that Black Sky collects, it's a public company now, is data that essentially takes like sky level pictures and images of certain areas and places and uses that data to make processes more efficient to help things around the world, right? If you're delivering things during a disaster, things of that nature. So Palantir's Foundry software was implemented with that company, and as soon as Black Sky transferred all of the data that they had and all the integral data points that they had into the Foundry software, which is what Kevin's talking about the network effect and the data entering into the algorithm, making it smarter, Palantir was able to immediately offer that data to all of his clients. This was a couple months ago, right? And that, to me, is actually sort of the basis of the network effect and the reason why the concern for Palantir, or why the value proposition for Palantir makes sense. Now, the privacy thing, if I had to give them the benefit of the doubt, or if I had to give the argument the benefit of the doubt, it would be that because a company like Black Sky, for example, gave its data to the Foundry algorithm, and other companies are giving their data to the Foundry algorithm, now they're scared that their data is being mixed with other companies' data within the algorithm, which is creating a privacy concern. This I don't necessarily understand, though, right? The reason I don't understand this claim is because if the data coming into the software makes the software better, those companies get an intrinsic benefit from it, right? It's like on YouTube. It's like you wouldn't want beauty YouTubers to not be on YouTube just because you're a finance YouTuber, because those beauty YouTubers end up bringing more of an audience, right? Their fans to the platform that have a potential chance to search for your content one day. So why would you not want them to be on the platform? So it's kind of the same thing with privacy. It's like if the algorithm and the data that's entering the algorithms for these other companies are only helping the data get better, which is going to help those companies and their processes become more efficient, more effective, etc., the technology overall is going to get better, then to me, this actually makes the total addressable market bigger, right? YouTube gets bigger and bigger and bigger as more people join the internet and more people consume online video. Palantir gets bigger and bigger and bigger as more companies contribute their data to the software and the algorithms within the software, Foundry, Gotham, Apollo, and then Palantir is able to permeate that stuff into all other organizations that want that data to be more effective. So now, if there is some articles that he's referencing or some other videos that he's talking about like a specific privacy concern that companies are having, then maybe I'm a little bit misguided on that, and I'd be happy to see that out. But I haven't necessarily seen companies be afraid of using Palantir because of privacy. I've seen companies like flock to Palantir, growing 30% year over year, because they want that data and those artificial intelligence algorithms to make their processes more efficient. The other reason I think this privacy argument doesn't really hold up too much is because Palantir works with the government, right? Like I think 60% of the revenue right now is the government. We're talking about the CIA, we're talking about the NIH, CDC. So when you're working with all these major organizations, the data you collect from them, Facebook would never be contracted to work with like the CIA, because Facebook is known to have data breaches, specifically with consumer user and data, right? Like our emails, our photos, our phones, our numbers, all that stuff. Palantir's never been known to do that because they've exclusively worked with companies for the far majority of their 17 years before they went public, and they learned how to be secure and private with vast amounts of data. So you're talking about a company that has kept data not only private, but secure at the highest of levels, more secure than something like an AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure that pretty much exclusively, not exclusively, but like their majority of their clientele is commercial, right? Palantir was forced to work with clients that if their data got breached, like the world's fate could be on the line, right? You're talking about if something got leaked out of the CIA, we're talking about terrorist attacks, right? That's a really big deal. So I do think that the software is advanced enough and the company is advanced enough and the technology is advanced enough for the network effect to be exponential, which increases the TAM, right? That's why I don't think the argument MeetKevin's making is necessarily true. The only way he gets this argument is if companies decide to not give their data because they're afraid of privacy. I don't think he gets that argument because we've known Palantir as to be a company that protects privacy because they work with the most important organizations, i.e. the government, the CIA, in the entire world to protect the Western Hemisphere, which is sort of their key philosophical values. And then third, companies are not going to be afraid to give their data if they know that the algorithm is going to get better and then they're going to get more value out of it, right? Same thing with the YouTube example. You're not going to be afraid to post your video on YouTube and like give up your exclusive right to post somewhere else if you know you're going to get an audience on YouTube. So like there's a relationship, there's an exchange of value, there's a trade-off ultimately, but that trade-off matters because you trust that YouTube's going to show your video to people and you also trust that your video is going to be safe on YouTube. I think most companies working with Palantir trust that the Foundry software or whatever software they implement in their company is going to make their company more effective and meaningful. And the data they provide is going to allow the company to ultimately give more and more data every time they ship over-the-air updates to the software in every single company, because the mass amount of data that is aggregated is going to help everyone, which is why I don't think there's a major privacy concern. Final thing I'll say is that, I think the stock, he did some good analysis on the numbers, but it's at $21. If it drops to 18, 19, I know Kathy's going to load up, so I can't see MeetKevin not loading up. If he's this concerned about it, maybe that makes sense. But if it goes down that low, I would presumably think he would load up on even more, or at least load up on some calls, because when you talk about something that could have an exponential marketplace that gets that big and the TAM gets that bigger and bigger because of the network effect of the algorithm, then I think the privacy concern is minimized. And I do think the stock is extremely undervalued if the TAM gets to the level to the point where it's the most important software company in the world. Then at $20, it's an absolute steal. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this video. Definitely love MeetKevin. I think he's an awesome YouTuber. It really inspires me. This is just a little bit of a disagreement I had, and it's not that big of a disagreement. I understand his concern. I understand the sort of larger claim he's making, especially about the earnings ratio that he did. But I do think the privacy argument is a little bit weird, especially because I just don't think companies are that afraid to use the software. And, as the marketing and sales gets better by Palantir, hopefully more and more companies are going to understand the value of using it. So my name is Mitt. Thank you guys for watching the Daily Business Show, and I will see you, as always, in the next one.